"It's very unfortunate," said I. "I don't know what to do, Trot." "It does happen, unfortunately," said Mr. Wickfield. "But I'll tell you what you can do, Miss Trotwood." "What's that?" inquired my aunt. "Leave your nephew here for the present. He's a quiet fellow. He won't disturb me at all. It's a capital house for study, as quiet as a monastery, and almost as roomy. Leave him here." My aunt evidently liked the offer, though she was delicate of accepting it. So did I. "Come, Miss Trotwood," said Mr. Wickfield. "This is the way out of the difficulty. It's only a temporary arrangement, you know. If it don't act well, or don't quite accord with our mutual convenience, he can easily go to the right about. There will be time to find some better place for him in the meanwhile. You had better determine to leave him here for the present." "I am very much obliged to you," said my aunt, "and so is he, I see. But—" "Come, I know what you mean," cried Mr. Wickfield. "You shall not be oppressed by the receipt of favours, Miss Trotwood. You may pay for him if you like. We won't be hard about terms, but you shall pay if you will." "On that understanding," said my aunt, "though it doesn't lessen the real obligation, I shall be very glad to leave him." "Then come and see my little housekeeper," said Mr. Wickfield. We accordingly went up a wonderful old staircase, with a balustrade so broad that we might have gone up that almost as easily, and into a shady old drawing-room, lighted by some 3 or 4 of the quaint windows I had looked up at from the street, which had old oak seats in them that seemed to have come of the same trees as the shining oak floor and the great beams in the ceiling. It was a prettily furnished room, with a piano and some lively furniture in red and green, and some flowers. It seemed to be all old nooks and corners, and in every nook and corner there was some queer little table or cupboard or bookcase or seat or something or other that made me think there was not much another good corner in the room, until I looked at the next one and found it equal to it, if not better. On everything there was the same air of retirement and cleanliness that marked the house outside. Mr. Wickfield tapped at a door in a corner of the panelled wall, and a girl of about my own age came quickly out and kissed him. On her face I saw immediately the placid and sweet expression of the lady whose picture had looked at me downstairs. It seemed to my imagination as if the portrait had grown womanly, and the original remained a child. Although her face was quite bright and happy, there was a tranquillity about it, and about her, a quiet, good, calm spirit that I never have forgotten, that I never shall forget. This was his little housekeeper, his daughter, Agnes, Mr. Wickfield said. When I heard how he said it, and saw how he held her hand, I guessed what the one motive of his life was. She had a little basket trifle hanging at her side with keys in it, and she looked as staid and as discreet as a housekeeper as the old house could have. She listened to her father, as he told her about me, with a pleasant face, and when he had concluded, proposed to my aunt that we should go upstairs and see my room. We all went together, she before us. A glorious old room it was, with more oak beams and diamond panes, and the broad balustrade going all the way up to it. I cannot call to mind where or when, in my childhood, I had seen a stained glass window in a church, nor do I recollect its subject, but I know that when I saw her turn round in the grave light of the old staircase and wait for us above, I thought of that window, and I associated something of its tranquil brightness with Agnes Wickfield ever afterwards. My aunt was as happy as I was in the arrangement made for me, and we went down to the drawing-room again, well pleased and gratified. As she would not hear of would not hear of staying to dinner, lest she should by any chance fail to arrive at home with the grey pony before dark, and as I apprehend Mr. Wickfield knew her too well to argue any point with her, some lunch was provided for her there, and Agnes went back to her governess, and Mr. Wickfield to his office. So we were left to take leave of one another without any restraint. She told me that everything would be arranged for me by Mr. Wickfield, and that I should want for nothing, and gave me the kindest words and the best advice. Trot, said my aunt in conclusion, be a credit to yourself, to me, and Mr. Dick, and heaven be with you. I was greatly overcome, and could only thank her again and again, and send my love to Mr. Dick. Never, said my aunt, be mean in anything. Never be false, never be cruel. Avoid those 3 vices, Trot, and I can always be hopeful of you. I promised as well as I could that I would not abuse her kindness or forget her admonition. The pony's at the door, said my aunt, and I am off. Stay here. With these words, she embraced me hastily, and went out of the room, shutting the door after her. At first I was startled by so abrupt a departure, and almost feared I had displeased her, but when I looked into the street, and saw how dejectedly she got into the chaise, and drove away without looking up, I understood her better, and did not do her that injustice. By 5 o'clock, which was Mr. Wickfield's dinner hour, I had mustered up my spirits again, and was ready for my knife and fork. The cloth was only laid for us two, but Agnes was waiting in the drawing-room before dinner, went down with her father, and sat opposite to him at table. I doubted whether he could have dined without her. We did not stay there after dinner, but came upstairs into the drawing-room again, in one snug corner of which Agnes sat glasses for her father and a decanter of port wine. I thought he would have missed its usual flavour if it had been put there for him by any other hands. There he sat, taking his wine, and taking a good deal of it, for 2 hours, while Agnes played on the piano, worked, and talked to him and me. He was, for the most part, gay and cheerful with us, but sometimes his eyes rested on her, and he fell into a brooding state and was silent. She always observed this quickly, I thought, and always roused him with a question or caress. Then he came out of his meditation and drank more wine. Agnes made the tea and presided over it, and the time passed away after it, as after dinner, until she went to bed, when her father took her in his arms and kissed her, and she, being gone, ordered candles in his office. Then I went to bed too. But in the course of the evening I had rambled down to the door and a little way along the street, that I might have another peep at the old houses and the grey cathedral, and might think of my coming through that old city on my journey, and of my passing the very house I lived in without knowing it. As I came back, I saw Uriah Heep shutting up the office, and, feeling friendly towards everybody, went in and spoke to him, and, at parting, gave him my hand. But oh, what a clammy hand his was, as ghostly to the touch as to the sight. I rubbed mine afterwards to warm it, and to rub his off. It was such an uncomfortable hand that, when I went to my room, it was still cold and wet upon my memory. Leaning out of the window, and seeing one of the faces on the beam ends looking at me sideways, I fancied it was Uriah Heep got up there somehow, and shut him out in a hurry. Chapter 16. I am a new boy in more senses than one. Next morning, after breakfast, I entered on school life again. I went, accompanied by Mr. Wickfield, to the scene of my future studies, a grave building in a courtyard with a learned air about it that seemed very well suited to the stray rooks and jackdaws who came down from the cathedral towers to walk with a clerkly bearing on the grass plot, and was introduced to my new master, Dr. Strong. Dr. Strong looked almost as rusty to my thinking as the tall iron rails and gates outside the house, and almost as stiff and heavy as the great stone urns that flanked them and were set up on the top of the red brick wall at regular distances all round the court, like sublimated skittles for time to play at. He was in his library, I mean, Dr. Strong was, with his clothes not particularly well brushed and his hair not particularly well combed, his knee smalls unbraced, his long black gaiters unbuttoned, and his shoes yawning like two caverns on the hearth rug. Turning upon me a lustreless eye, that reminded me of a long-forgotten blind old horse who once used to crop the grass and tumble over the graves in Blunderstone churchyard. He said he was glad to see me, and then he gave me his hand, which I didn't know what to do with, as it did nothing for itself. But sitting at work, not far off from Dr. Strong, was a very pretty young lady whom he called Annie, and who was his daughter, I supposed, who got me out of my difficulty by kneeling down to put Dr. Strong's shoes on and button his gaiters, which she did with great cheerfulness and quickness. When she had finished, and we were going out to the schoolroom, I was much surprised to hear Mr. Wickfield, in bidding her good morning, address her as Mrs. Strong, and I was wondering, could she be Dr. Strong's son's wife, or could she be Mrs. Dr. Strong, when Dr. Strong himself unconsciously enlightened me. By the by, Wickfield, he said, stopping in a passage with his hand on my shoulder, you have not found any suitable provision for my wife's cousin yet? No, said Mr. Wickfield. No, not yet. I could wish it done as soon as it can be done, Wickfield, said Dr. Strong, for Jack Maldon is needy and idle, and of those two bad things, worse things sometimes come. What does Dr. Watts say? He added, looking at me, and moving his head to the time of his quotation. Satan finds some mischief still for idle hands to do. Egad, Doctor, returned Mr. Wickfield, if Dr. Watts knew mankind, he might have written with as much truth, Satan finds some mischief still for busy hands to do. The busy people achieve their full share of mischief in the world, you may rely upon it. What have the people been about? Who have been the busiest in getting money and in getting power this century or two? No mischief? Jack Maldon will never be very busy in getting either, I expect, said Dr. Strong, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Perhaps not, said Mr. Wickfield, and you bring me back to the question with an apology for digressing. No, I have not been able to dispose of Mr. Jack Maldon yet, I believe. He said this with some hesitation. I penetrate your motive, and it makes the thing more difficult. My motive, returned Dr. Strong, is to make some suitable provision for a cousin and an old playfellow of Annie's. Yes, I know, said Mr. Wickfield, at home or abroad. Aye, replied the doctor, apparently wondering why he emphasized those words so much, at home or abroad. Your own expression, you know, said Mr. Wickfield, or abroad. Surely, the doctor answered, surely one or other. One or other? Have you no choice? Asked Mr. Wickfield. No, returned the doctor. No? With astonishment. Not the least. No motive, said Mr. Wickfield, for being abroad and not at home. No, returned the doctor. I am bound to believe you, and of course I do believe you, said Mr. Wickfield. It might have simplified my office very much if I had known it before, but I confess I entertained another impression. Dr. Strong regarded him with a puzzled and doubting look, which almost immediately subsided into a smile that gave me great encouragement, for it was full of amiability and sweetness, and there was a simplicity in it, and indeed in his whole manner, when the studious, pondering frost upon it was got through, very attractive and hopeful to a young scholar like me. Repeating no and not the least, and other short assurances to the same purport, Dr. Strong jogged on before us at a queer, uneven pace, and we followed. Mr. Wickfield looking grave, I observed, and shaking his head to himself without knowing that I saw him. The schoolroom was a pretty large hall on the quietest side of the house, confronted by the stately stare of some half-dozen of the great urns, and commanding a peep of an old secluded garden belonging to the doctor, where the peaches were ripening on the sunny south wall. There were two great aloes in tubs on the turf outside the windows, the broad hard leaves of which plant, looking as if they were made of painted tin, have ever since by association been symbolical to me of silence and retirement. About 5 and 20 boys were studiously engaged at their books when we went in, but they rose to give the doctor good morning, and remained standing when they saw Mr. Wickfield and me. "A new boy, young gentleman," said Doctor Trotwood Copperfield. One Adams, who was the head boy, then stepped out of his place and welcomed me. He looked like a young clergyman in his white cravat, but he was very affable and good-humoured, and he showed me my place, and presented me to the masters in a gentlemanly way that would have put me at my ease if anything could. It seemed to me so long, however, since I had been among such boys, or among any companions of my own age, except Mick Walker and Mealy Potatoes, that I felt as strange as ever as I have done in all my life. I was so conscious of having passed through scenes of which they could have no knowledge, and of having acquired experiences foreign to my age, appearance, and condition as one of them, that I half believed it was an imposture to come there as an ordinary little schoolboy. I had become, in the Murdstone and Grimby time, however short or long it may have been, so unused to the sports and games of boys that I knew I was awkward and inexperienced in the commonest things belonging to them. Whatever I had learnt had so slipped away from me in the sordid cares of my life from day to night, that now, when I was examined about what I knew nothing, and was put into the lowest form of the school. But, troubled as I was by my want of boyish skill and of book learning too, I was made infinitely more uncomfortable by the consideration that, in what I did know, I was much farther removed from my companions than in what I did not. My mind ran upon what they would think if they knew of my familiar acquaintance with the King's Bench prison. Was there anything about me which would reveal my proceedings in connection with the Micawber family? All of those pawnings and sellings and suppers in spite of myself? Suppose some of the boys had seen me coming through Canterbury, wayworn and ragged, and should find me out. What would they say, who made so light of money, if they could know how I had scraped my halfpence together for the purchase of my daily saveloy and beer or my slices of pudding? How would it affect them, who were so innocent of London life and London streets, to discover how knowing I was and was ashamed to be in some of the meanest phases of both? All this ran in my head so much on that first day at Dr. Strong's that I felt distrustful of my slightest look and gesture, shrunk within myself whensoever I was approached by one of my new schoolfellows, and hurried off the minute school was over, afraid of committing myself in my response to any friendly notice or advance. But there was such an influence in Mr. Wickfield's old house that when I knocked at it, with my new school books under my arm, I began to feel my uneasiness softening away. As I went up to my airy old room, the grave shadow of the staircase seemed to fall upon my doubts and fears, and to make the past more indistinct. I sat there, sturdily conning my books until dinner time. We were out of school for good at 3, and went down, hopeful of becoming a passable sort of boy yet. Agnes was in the drawing room, waiting for her father, who was detained by someone in his office. She met me with her pleasant smile and asked me how I liked the school. I told her I should like it very much, I hoped, but I was little strange to it at first. You have never been to school? I said. Have you? Oh, yes, every day. Ah, but you mean here at your own home? Papa couldn't spare me to go anywhere else, she answered, smiling and shaking her head. His housekeeper must be in his house, you know. He is very fond of you, I am sure, I said. She nodded, yes, and we went to the door to listen for his coming up, that she might meet him on the stairs, but as he was not there, she came back again. Mamma has been dead ever since I was born, she said in her quiet way. I only know her picture downstairs. I saw you looking at it yesterday. Did you think whose it was? I told her yes, because it was so like herself. Papa says so too, said Agnes, pleased. Hark! That's Papa now. Her bright, calm face lighted up with pleasure as she went to meet him, and as they came in, hand in hand, he greeted me cordially and told me I should certainly be happy under Dr. Strong, who was one of the gentlest of men. There may be some, perhaps, I don't know that there are who abuse his kindness, said Mr. Wakefield. Never be one of those, Trotwood, in anything. He is the least suspicious of mankind, and whether that's a merit or whether it's a blemish, it deserves consideration in all dealings with the doctor, great or small. He spoke, I thought, as if he were weary or dissatisfied with something, but I did not pursue the question in my mind, for dinner was just then announced, and we went down and took the same seats as before. We had scarcely done so when Uriah Heep put in his red head and his lank hand at the door and said, Here's Mr. Malden begs the favour of a word, sir. I am but this moment quit of Mr. Malden, said his master. Yes, sir, returned Uriah, but Mr. Malden has come back, and he begs the favour of a word. As he held the door open with his hand, Uriah looked at me and looked at Agnes and looked at the dishes and looked at the plates and looked at every object in the room, I thought, yet seemed to look at nothing. He made such an appearance all the while of keeping his red eyes dutifully on his master. I beg your pardon. It's only to say on reflection, observed a voice behind Uriah, as Uriah's head was pushed away and the speakers substituted. Pray excuse me for this intrusion. That, as it seems I have no choice in the matter, the sooner I go abroad the better. My cousin Annie did say, when we talked of it, that she liked to have her friends within reach rather than to have them banished, and the old doctor Dr. Strong was that, Mr. Wickfield interposed gravely. Dr. Strong, of course, returned the other. I call him the old doctor. It's all the same, you know. I don't know, returned Mr. Wickfield. Well, Dr. Strong, said the other. Dr. Strong was of the same mind, I believed, but as it appears from the course you take with me that he has changed his mind, why, there's no more to be said, except that the sooner I am off, the better. Therefore, I thought I'd come back and say that the sooner I am off, the better. When a plunge is to be made into the water, it's of no use lingering on the bank. There shall be as little lingering as possible in your case, Mr. Malden. You may depend upon it, said Mr. Wickfield. Thank'ee, said the other. Much obliged. I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, which is not a gracious thing to do. Otherwise, I dare say, my cousin Annie could easily arrange it in her own way. I suppose Annie would only have to say to the old doctor, meaning that Mrs. Strong could only have to say to her husband, Do I follow you? Said Mr. Wickfield. Quite so, returned the other. Would only have to say that she wanted such and such a thing to be so, and it would be so as a matter of course. And why as a matter of course, Mr. Malden? Asked Mr. Wickfield sedately, eating his dinner. Why, because Annie's a charming young girl, and the old doctor, Dr. Strong, I mean, is not quite a charming young boy, said Mr. Jack Maldon, laughing. No offence to anybody, Mr. Wickfield. I only mean that I suppose some compensation is fair and reasonable in that sort of marriage. Compensation to the ladies, sir? Asked Mr. Wickfield gravely. To the ladies, sir, Mr. Jack Maldon answered, laughing, but appearing to remark that Mr. Wickfield went on with his dinner in the same sedate, immovable manner, and that there was no hope of making him relax a muscle of his face, he added, however, I have said what I came back to say, and with another apology for this intrusion, I may take myself off. Of course, I shall observe your directions in considering the matter to be as one to be arranged between you and me solely, and not to be referred to up at the doctor's.